Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It's a great honor for me to be here with you. You look great from here. And it's a privilege to be with my colleagues from other countries, have the same problems, suffering from the same kind of oppression. So we are sharing the same, in a way, destiny, and we have the same problems. But it's not only our problem. People from Poland, we have friends from Hungary, Poland, Egypt here, but it's not a kind of problem for the Easterners. But the Western world is partly responsible of what's going on in our area. So that's why we need to have some friends from Western world as well to join us in this kind of panels. And I know that in Germany, you found the journalists, as an ordinary journalist, found the conditions ready when they start their career. But for them, press freedom is a kind of benefit, not only benefit, but a normal life right for them in the beginning of their daily life. For us, press freedom is a kind of utopia that we have to fight for, and sometimes even at the expense of our lives. So it's really very crucial for us. We've been giving numbers about the prisoners of Turkey, some prisoners in jail, some journalists in jail. We have 150 journalists in jail in Turkey, makes the Turkey the biggest jail for journalists. But they are not only numbers for us, they are my friends and my colleagues. So today I just want to give you some examples of some personal stories, and starting from my story. And instead of giving a general view about Turkey, I'm just going to give some more micro issues, let's say. And I'll start with my story now. This is a story I made the year before. It was about the armory. You saw the weapons there. Those are the trucks belongs to the Turkish intelligence service. They were trafficking arms illegally, smuggling arms to Syria. And this was my headline, saying that those are the weapons that Erdogan says we're not. So when we published this story, our website was banned right away, and an investigation has started against us. The government didn't deny the story. The story was true, but they said it was a state secret that shouldn't be revealed. And the other day, Erdogan, in a TV show, said that the person who made this story will pay a heavy price. I will not let him go. He was talking about me as a president. So he couldn't make it right away. He couldn't arrest me right away because the elections were close. But after the election in November, the year before, I was arrested, accusing of being a spy, trying to topple the government, and aiding a terrorist organization, revealing the state secrets, 4 accusations, and I was asked 2 life sentences just for a true story, which was equal to death penalty in the old law. For one story, I would be hanged, which was a true story. So I found myself in a police car and heading to Silivri prison. And Silivri is the most famous and the biggest prison in Turkey. It's a big compound where 15,000 people were kept arrested, under arrest there, and most of the journalists are now in Silivri, including Deniz Yücel. And this is the entrance of the compound, and I was together with another colleague from our paper who published the report, an official report about the weapons. he was together with me. So we went Silivri. And behind the bars, we passed the iron doors through our cells. They put us in different cells, and we couldn't see each other. This was rather a comfortable ward, so for us, but we complained about the solitary confinement because we were all alone in our cells. So when we complained about the solitary confinement, the answer came from a pro-government paper saying that we are staying in a duplex villa, so comfortable and luxurious. And this is our cell. Now Deniz Yücel is in the same cell with this, and this is, in fact, it's a double room, very comfortable, and for a lonely person. You have 3 beds. You can choose which one you want to stay. So it was really comfortable. And this is our garden without flowers. It's all concrete and 8 steps to 10 steps. And those are 2 guys. In fact, they are lucky that there are 2 of them. Normally we were alone in this. And this is the only place that we can see the sky. But now it's closed with wires. And there's a loophole, as you see, there. And that's the only possibility that you can hear some voices from the other prisoners. So this is the only way we communicate with each other. If you bend down, you can hear some voices from the other prisoners. So I'm talking about not a journalist. Those guys are also journalists. So we are not killers or, bombers. We just made a story for this. And this is this is where we got our meals and letters and books. So this is the only way to communicate with the guards. And here is the visiting room where we see our families behind the window. We used to see them once in a week. And after the state of emergency, it's just once in a month now. I mean, Deniz Yücel can see his sister only once in a month for 1 hour under these circumstances. So, one day, on the 5th day of our arrestment, this journalist, whose name is Mete Akyol, 80 years old, came with a chair and put his chair in the entrance of the Silivri prison and started a protest campaign just by sitting on a chair, silently. And this solidarity action suddenly have fired a very powerful reaction campaign, and the other day, those 2 ex-presidents of the parliament in their 80s came and sit there. And the next day, there were hundreds in front of the prison. And we couldn't hear their voices, but we were, reading about it just after from our paper, just the other day. And just to make us hear, they came with their instruments and sang them songs there for us. And my wife took my awards in front of the prison, and even our editorial board made a meeting in front of the Silivri prison and decided about the headline. And they sent me a lawyer to ask about the headline, and I was directing the meeting from the prison. So those are the ways to tackle with those kind of governments, oppressive governments. And this is, him. Yeah, Deniz Yücel was there just to protest our arrestment and turned to be on duty there without knowing that one day he'll be in this prison and I'll be campaigning for him outside of the prison. So I wrote an article for Der Spiegel. It's easy to write it by hand because we are not allowed to use typewriters or computers. but write it by hand. And it was not legal to give it to someone without the knowledge of the prison administration. But I succeeded, secretly gave it to my lawyer, and Der Spiegel took it, translated, and published it on the 18th of December the year before. I was asking the German government not making deal with this oppressive Turkish government. Of course, they didn't listen to me. But on the 22nd of January last year, Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, came to Turkey for an official visit, and he sent a very strong message to the Turkish government by inviting my wife and my son before meeting with Erdogan. And he told my son that he could be proud of his father, who was a hero in his eyes. So it was a very strong message, and the Turkish government took this message very seriously. And after we learned the accusations, after our indictments were announced after 2.5 months, and the complainants were the president and the intelligence service. On the 26th of February, we were released by the decision of the Constitutional Court, saying that our news was not an act of terrorism, but an act of journalism. So it was a very important decision, and thanks to that, we were released. And Erdogan said that he wouldn't obey this decision. And after the last military coup attempt, 2 of the judges who decided for our release were arrested. And now they are in prison, in Silivri, of course. So on March, our trial has started. The judges gave the confidentiality order, and Erdogan accused the foreign diplomats who came to observe the hearing. And after 1.5 months at the last hearing, while we were waiting for the verdict, I was attacked by a gunman in front of the courthouse, which was the most protected place in Turkey, and survived thanks to the braveness of my wife, who jumped on the attacker and tried to take the gun from him. And my wife saved my life there. Yeah. And now, this is the time for the others. Now, those are the people who were arrested at the end of October. This time, the target was my editorial team. And Murat Sabuncu is the guy who is editor-in-chief of the paper who took after me, and 12 of my colleagues, including 4 authors and one of the editor-in-chief of the paper, 3 lawyers, and Musa Kart, our cartoonist, were arrested in one morning, and they arrested even our tea maker. Here's a very interesting story. If I have time for 3 more minutes, I will take. In fact, his guilt was in that day he was late in his job, and because Erdogan was around and they blocked the traffic, and he couldn't manage to go to the office early, and he was complaining about that. And he said if he would come to our office, I wouldn't give him a tea. And the next morning, they were arrested him because of talking about the president. And I'm now the #1 suspect of our case of Cumhuriyet, and those guys were in prison, has been in prison for the last 190 days today, without seeing any judge till now, and their hearing will be on July. And our caricaturist is accused of making fun of Erdogan, and Kadri Gürsel is giving subliminal messages to about in his articles, and really ridiculous accusations. They've been kept under arrest. And today, at this hour, I'm just waiting for the decision of another court against us. I was just talking to my wife. He's at the courtroom now, and they made another, they opened another file against us, this time together with a parliamentarian. And the parliamentarian is accused of giving the video to us. And so in the afternoon, I will have another court decision. I don't know how many years more, but I have already 6 years of imprisonment from the Turkish judges. So since there's no rule of law in the country, everything is under control of Erdogan. So that's why we are in exile or in prison. We are still fighting against this oppression, and we will keep the fights going. And I want you to support us in any case. So Turkey will be a free country thanks to this brave people, and thanks to your support and solidarity. Thank you very much for listening to me.
So much. Our next speaker in the session, Márton Gergely, is from Hungary. He's the lead editor of the domestic news desk of Hungary's largest current affairs weekly, HVG. Formerly, he was deputy chief editor of Népszabadság, which was Hungary's most widely read paper until the production ended as a result of a hostile, politically motivated takeover in 2016. Üdvözöllek, Márton.
Thank you for having me. This is new for me. I'm going to read. It was 7 months ago yesterday that we finished the last ever issue of Népszabadság, Hungary's by far biggest political daily. We did not know that it would not be like the day before or the day after. It was business as usual. The next day, we learned from the press that the paper we worked for ceased to be. While the shutdown of the paper caused an uproar, the formal end of the Népszabadság story passed away without remark in the last few months. One by one, the newsroom staff joined one or the other of Hungary's remaining independent media organizations, while the company close to Prime Minister Viktor Orbán that acquired the publishing rights for Népszabadság announced that it would no longer be publishing the paper. The announcement went on to say that the brand or the associated publishing rights were not for sale. The shutdown was final, its goal to terminate the newspaper. Despite considerable efforts in the months that followed, the Népszabadság staff could not get a new project off the ground. We are here to talk about what can be done in the face of an attack on press freedom by those in power, and I feel powerless. Playing the victim is an unpleasant task, but perhaps I can help others avoid the pitfalls we did not notice in time. I have come to believe that the crisis of Hungary's press is rooted in great part in the media's failure 15 years ago to resist becoming involved in the day-to-day conflicts of Hungarian politics. I know that there were exceptions then and there are exceptions today, but too many newsrooms went into battle and gave up the core principles of our profession. The Hungarian press engaged in name-calling. News organizations turned on each other, and instead of challenging politicians, leading editors and opinion writers now appeared before the public as representatives of bitterly opposed camps, engaged in divisive disputes, as politicians quietly withdrew from direct engagement with their opponents in meaningful debate. Hungarian politicians have a bizarre notion of press freedom. For them, a free press is one where each party controls its own news organization, which toes the party line. An attack on the freedom of the press is when the other side tries to muzzle a rival party's news outlet. This pathological and deeply damaging notion could have been rejected only by a united media sector. We should have shown solidarity with each other when it mattered. We are often asked where journalists willing to write and spread government propaganda bankrolled by Orbán's oligarchs come from. They did not have to be found in a hurry. Hungarian journalists were like the frog in the pot of water slowly brought to the boil. We did not notice that we were cooked. Journalists working at government-backed press organizations covered the long road, from honest indignation to maliciously spreading misinformation. There was no scandal big enough to unite the media sector. The deterioration was continuous. It has come to be accepted with apathy that the public service broadcaster and a large segment of the nominally privately owned media are controlled by certified propagandists. To make matters worse, over the past 15 years, an entire generation of journalists learned their craft and came to prominence in a toxic environment, which for them is the norm. 6 years after Népszabadság was shut down, 6 weeks after Népszabadság was shut down, I've learned the story of the Slovakian newspaper Deník N. The colleagues in Bratislava told us and showed us how to build a new press product from scratch without compromising one's principles so as to remain true to the core values of our profession. Editor-in-chief Matusz Kostolny and his team told us then that 6 weeks after the coup against Népszabadság, we had perhaps lost too much time to get a new project off the ground. I realized the next day that the lesson to be learned from Deník N was that we were already 2.5 years late to save Népszabadság when we found ourselves locked out of our offices. We should have taken a stand when the favorite Austrian frontman for Eastern Europe's oligarchs became the newspaper's new owner. We should have fled from Heinrich Petziner in 2014, but we wanted to trust the owner, and we had faith in our own journalistic integrity. When the first alarm bells started ringing, it hurt when a colleague speaking about Népszabadság and other Hungarian news outlets owned by wealthy partisan investors asked, what can a newsroom with a gangster for an owner expect? At the time, I was offended. I thought the colleague was judging me, but he was not talking about editorial freedom. He was talking about the folly of building on a volcano. In Naples, you can see how wonderful life is when the mountain is dormant. Indeed, Népszabadság was able to publish important and relevant content until the volcano erupted. Now it is too late. After the shutdown, we came up with a business plan. We had a motivated team, creative ideas, and yet we could not find a backer. Viktor Orbán took on the risk of a major international scandal only so that he could shut us down. This was not about money. Investors understood all too clearly. If they back us, they declare war against Orbán. I am no brave resistance fighter. I am far too hurt by our failure of the last 7 months and the never-ending fight among Hungarian newsmakers. Orbán's victory over Népszabadság became complete in the last few months, and no one took notice. A slice of Hungary's free press has disappeared, and we huddle together like polar bears on the ever-shrinking iceberg. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Ramy Raoof, is from Egypt. He's a researcher and an activist dedicated to working on digital and social issues, particularly digital security issues. In 2012, he was ranked number 10 in the Newsweek magazine in the Revolutionaries list of the Digital Power Index, which is a pretty cool claim to fame. Ramy provides digital security plans and strategies to NGOs and members of the media. He provides emergency response in the case of physical threats, and he supports the publishing of sensitive materials in Egypt and the MENA region. Please give a warm welcome. Salam, Ramy.
In Cairo in June 2010, we organized a protest against police violence and torture. And we knew in advance in this protest we will have very few media presence to cover what's going on. So me and a bunch of techies, we were experimenting, and we attached mobile phones cameras to our chest and shoulders, and we began providing live stream online to what was going on by distributing cameras and doing live stream to what's happening, and the cameras were on our body itself. On the same day, it was my first time to experience police kidnaps when they tried to snatch me. And I was super lucky to have my friends beside me to rescue Mac when the police tried to kidnap me. A couple of months later on, during the build-up for Jan 25, we established a network operations center to streamline all kinds of tech and legal and medical support for people in the square through multiple hotlines where people would send to us requests or information, and through a bunch of lawyers and researchers, we would engage with them back and forth. It happened during that time, on Jan 23rd and 5, I was running the technical aspect of this operation, and it happened that my personal mobile line was one of the hotlines of that operation. So during that time, people would send requests, and from the 23rd, there were hundreds of communications coming on very normally. And then suddenly, on the 25th afternoon, everything stopped on my mobile phone. Nothing is working anymore. I got a little bit suspicious, and then I called the mobile operator, which is a multinational company working in Egypt. And after escalation, they told me the state security ordered them to suspend services from certain activists, and they gave them a list, and my name was on that list. So they had to shut down the internet, the voice calls, all kinds of services on my mobile line. These events and many other things that happened to me and my friends over the past 5 years made me realize and understand the adversary is always obsessed about any flow of information. They always want to control any alternative narration. They want to control any knowledge that might potentially lead to any kind of social change. And among different techniques the adversary use to crack down on people, in my opinion, are two main things that are happening right now, at least in Egypt. One is by invading people's privacy and killing any form of privacy. And the second thing is by cracking down on any form of civil society. On one hand, privacy is core enabler for people to be able to freely organize, express, build custom knowledge, and organize as they want. And for the adversary to kill our privacy, they would basically need to deploy intrusion techniques, mass and targeted surveillance with the help of different countries and different companies in different places. And we have seen this happening over the past 2 years in different ways, by monitoring and capturing our personal life as a way to punish people later on for any personal differences between us. And NGOs and human rights groups, they play a crucial role under dictatorships, not only in terms of documenting and defending people's rights, but more importantly is by presenting facts and presenting different narration that would potentially lead to any kind of change that we are dreaming of. All the time, people ask me from different places, how can we help? And in my opinion, one major instrument and way of resistance is that we keep publishing information, we keep exposing them, and we make the process for them much more harder and much more tough. The more we expose information, the more we are more effective than them, because the adversary realized very well accumulation of knowledge will potentially lead to some kind of change. And one major instrument people in different places can utilize is by deploying Freedom of Information Acts. The way that you can help in this room is by questioning your own governments on the relationships with dictatorships on the other side of the universe. You have access to question your elected governments to understand different kind of information that everyone is trying to control all the time. The more you submit requests and question different things, the more you understand, the more you help us to understand, the more we can see the bigger picture in different places. Governments and dictatorships always are obsessed by controlling information and by shutting down any kind of information that they don't want to do. So they engage with different countries and deploy different techniques, and they lock us down. And there is always so much fear and paranoia from information. They are always freaked out by publishing information, and they feel very weak when we start exposing them and exposing what's going on. You can help us by that. You can help us by questioning your own elected governments on what's going on with other countries in different places. And FOIA request is very crucial in that. And just let me give you two quick examples. We found out recently United Kingdom granted export license of surveillance gear to Egypt between 2015 and 2016. And the UK gave Egypt hacking equipment and surveillance equipment, and we only knew this through a FOIA request. Many different information like this we can't know and we can't access unless activists and journalists in different places help us and start submitting FOIA requests to different people. Another example happened from Italy. Over the last year, Italy authorities authorized a very well-known company there to export monitoring system to Egypt after some human rights groups, some pressure, and some political complexity. Later on, a few weeks ago, the authorities revoked this kind of license. FOIA request is a lengthy process. It's hectic. It's not easy. It needs so much effort and pressure. That's true. But it's a good start. It's a good start to release any kind of data sets that would help everyone understand. Because over the past 30 years in Egypt in particular, the main power balance is about information. The more they lock down information, and on the other hand, we try to release more information to inform ourselves and inform others. So I would like to encourage you to please engage with FOIA requests, submit FOIA requests all the time, question your own governments about military budget allocation, intelligence share with Egypt, any kind of exchange happening between your own intelligence and our own intelligence, how does the military aid helps, and so on. And whenever you get any response from the governments, please release them publicly online and make everything available. And don't get lazy or critical about this. It's very crucial. And even though you think any simple information might not be that important, but from our side, any information is good information. And accumulation of knowledge will help us eventually. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramy. Our final speaker in the session, Katarzyna Szymielewicz, is from Poland. She's an expert in human rights and technology and an activist, and co-founder of the Panoptykon Foundation, which is a Polish NGO defending human rights in the surveyed society with the aim of controlling back the controllers. Witamy, Katarzyna.
Hello, friends. Panoptykon Foundation has been active as a watchdog organization in the digital rights area in Poland for more than 8 years. It's been a long time, and I have to admit here today that it has never been easy work for us. You can imagine that speaking to any government about mass surveillance, blanket data retention, video surveillance, whatever it is they have in mind, has never been easy. We got used to that position of watchdog that is often ignored, irritating, misunderstood by both politicians and the public. But then in last 18 months, which is the time when law and justice, peace ruling party has been controlling the political scene, our situation became, in a strange way, much more difficult. even though we haven't moved an inch from where we were standing for those 8 years, we are still speaking for the same values. We are still trying to use the same democratic procedures. We are still representing the same ideas. Somehow it feels that the ground underneath our feet is moving. It feels as if the fuses from the electric system have been removed, and what was once safe became dangerous. You can imagine 2 years ago, we were going to the parliament, sitting in those dark rooms for a long time, almost bored with how long it took to discuss certain laws, discuss technicalities of new surveillance laws. And last year, for the first time, I found myself in a position staying outside of the parliament in the cold with a little baby, being refused to enter the parliament because the debate was supposed to be closed, even for us as the audience. Then we thought, does it really make sense to try to enter the parliament and debate inside if all meaningful, real political decisions are made not in the parliament, not in that building, but in the office of Jarosław Kaczyński, who is the leader of Law and Justice, without keeping any official political position in the government. Then we still see laws being made that are extremely dangerous for human digital rights. So we want to comment on those laws. But our only chance to comment on the anti-terrorist law affecting many foreigners, including many of you in Poland and also Polish citizens, was that we got hold of that draft law in the white envelope sent to us by a whistleblower, because the draft law was never published. And our only chance to comment was to get hold of it in this surprising, strange way. Yes, we can still go to the media, we can comment those phenomena in the media, we can complain. But if we go to the public media, we have to face the real risk that whatever we say will be used against us, because public media since last year are national media controlled by the one political party and one type of thinking. Whatever we say there will be probably used against us in a form of a smear campaign or any other way of questioning our legitimacy, our agenda, who we are as watchdog organization. We can still go to courts. Courts in Poland exist, but the Constitutional Court, the one that usually discusses legitimacy of the laws and them being in line with the Constitution or not, now is fully controlled by the same party. And it's very unlikely that the final decision will be in line with what we believe to be human rights. So what would you do? Would you go to such a court, or would you declare the court non-existing? So we can still use many procedures that exist on paper, but we find ourselves in this very weird position where, yes, discussing surveillance is still possible, discussing the laws is still possible, but at the same time, the government and the media machinery works very hard to undermine our legitimacy, to undermine who we are, to cut down all the funding available to independent NGOs in Poland, to question their legitimacy and present us as foreign spies. So what would you do? Would you still pursue your own agenda, what you believe in, or would you let them engage you in that strange fight about yourself? I never wanted to be advocate of myself. That's not the role that I was determined to play in the country. I always wanted to be the advocate of digital and human rights. And now I'm in a position of, in a way, defending myself and my own organization and paying a high price for that. So we feel as if we are a frog boiled in a more and more hot water, same as our Hungarian colleagues. We know that, we feel that, but at the same time, it's very hard for us to draw the red line, to decide when should we change the strategy, stop playing the democratic game, declare that this is no longer the game we can play, and move to a very different position, possibly even outside of Poland. We don't see that red line, and maybe this is the point where we as movement, working together, can help each other. Maybe if you see that Poland is crossing that red line, you should be the ones telling us, being inside, that the game is changing, the way that we shouldn't accept it anymore. Maybe that's the one thing we should do together. I'm very confident that we, as the movement of people who are not pushed back within the national states, who are not accepting the populist concept of nation state and the nation fighting other nation, that we will survive, that our values will survive. But what we really do with those in the countries where there is more and more oppression, surveillance, and internal fights. I really don't know, but I know one thing, that we cannot stay within that beautiful bubble. That if we keep just doing what we do as the movement, it will be important, but it won't be enough. We have to move beyond, and we have to somehow reach out to those people who support those governments, who vote for them, or who sit silent when those bad things happen to people like us, and people in Egypt, and people in Hungary, and people in much more difficult spaces than Poland. Because if we don't do that, very soon countries like Poland, that is in between, and countries who might now seem quite democratic, move also beyond that red line, and we will not even notice. So we have to find a way to reach out beyond. Maybe it's love, maybe it's something else, I don't know. Help me find out. Let's work together. Thank you.